19th century jaw-dropping high-resolution images, and there are tens of thousands of them. Would you believe this 19th century photograph is 3.2 meters wide and 1 meter high, and weighs in digitally at a whopping 3,000 megabytes. If you find this hard to believe, you wouldn't be alone. When the experts from Australia contacted UNESCO for World Heritage listing, the experts at UNESCO also didn't believe that a photograph of this size could possibly exist. The 19th century photos were discovered in Australia in 2013, and from what I can find were only released to the public in 2017. I have many images from the 19th century that are incredibly crisp and sharp. Some of the images are so crisp and sharp that one could think they were photographed this morning. The resolutions I have of some of these photographs are higher than that of this video recording. This image of Dresden is particularly interesting. The clarity is amazing, and we see covered wagons in the street. Civil War photos that look like they were photographed yesterday. And many photos of empty cities, also in seemingly such high definition, and from what I was ever taught or told should not have been possible in the 19th century. Upon researching this discovery in Australia, I was led to find more photographic collections, how they were done, and then I was able to follow the technique back to the 17th century, and to 17th century video. In 2013, photographs of 19th century Australia were found in a backyard garden shed in Chatswood, Victoria, Australia. The collection is named after the man who commissioned the photographs. The Bernard Otto Holtermann collection comprises 3,500 glass photographic negative plates. UNESCO was contacted about the two largest images, and as quoted by Margaret Riley, Curator of Research and Discovery, State Library of New South Wales, UNESCO did not believe that the photographic plates could possibly exist, and now 3 of these images have been recognised by UNESCO as the world's largest 19th century photographic negatives. So how big are they? Each of the 3,500 negatives are glass. All but 3 of the glass negatives are 8 millimeters thick and 1 meter high and 1 meter wide. 2 of the negatives are 1.3 meters in width, and the largest being a colossal 1.6 meters wide and weighing in at a whopping 30 kilos. So question, who is making glass that big and of such quality for photographic negatives in the 19th century? The largest photographic plate in the collection is the Sydney Harbour, and it comprises 2 plates at 1.6 meters each. The image created is 20,000 pixels long, weighing in at about 3 gigabytes, which is 3,000 megabytes. I gather this would be an uncompressed TIFF file. Let's get a comparison. My Nikon P900 camera has a maximum file resolution of 16 megapixels, which creates a maximum JPEG file size of about 7 megabytes. So a 2-image panorama would weigh in about 40 megabytes in a JPEG file. So in an uncompressed TIFF file, we could see at least 90 megabytes. And here we have, as a flat fact, for all to see, a 19th century image at 3,000 megabytes. Holtermann took some of the photographic plates on tour overseas, and his entries in photographic expositions won a bronze prize in Philadelphia in 1876, and then a silver in Paris in 1878. So obviously there were photographic competitions at the expositions, which is similar to today. So a question that arises is just what was the competition's photographic negatives like, especially if Holtermann only won a silver and a bronze prize. Someone else won the gold. There is a lot more information to be gleaned in the Holtermann story, his gold find, and the photographs of 19th century Australia that Holtermann commissioned. But I will leave Holtermann now. As I mentioned before, there are more collections of glass photographic negatives. One collection, which is currently being digitised by the National Film and Sound Archive of Australia, is some 10,000 glass plate slides. Another collection of note is 698 glass slides, which are dated around 1875 and include this image, which is a traffic jam in Melbourne. There's a lot of movement in this picture. As with many of the pictures from these collections, there is little or no ghosting from exposure issues. As much as being an Australian and liking to think that Australia just may be the colossal photographic capital of the 19th century, it is not. 99% of all 19th century photographs were glass plate negatives, so people took colossal photographs on colossal pieces of glass with colossal cameras. The camera on screen is an example of a colossal camera. The official narrative says that the glass plate negative remained in use until the 1920s or the 1930s, whichever one you read, until the Kodak celluloid plastics replaced the glass in photography. Yet my research showed this narrative to be false. Let's look at a few sizes down from the colossal camera and go to a giant camera. This camera is stated to be manufactured in 1930. It is a mahogany Hunter Penrose 20 by 24 inch process camera. So clearly this photographic process continued after the official narrative states. Here is the Queensland Government Cartography Department in Australia photographing maps with one of these Hunter Penrose cameras. In this image we see a very large glass plate being quality checked. Then we have some very large format camera examples a little later in time. Here is Margaret Bourke-White, Grant Williams, and I was unable to identify this gentleman. Glass was the most common medium for these photographic plates, but these clever people of the past also processed images onto tin. These were called tintype. Some of the tintype photography is easy to spot. The condition of the photographic tintype is obviously dependent upon the storage and care. This one has seen better days, but some of them, especially from the Civil War era, are in excellent condition. But the glass, on the other hand, is lasting centuries. So before I get to the next bit, there is a revival of this type of photography. The recipes are known, and there are detailed plans around to make one of these cameras for yourself. When I was a child, my parents and their friends had slide nights. My sister and I as children found these nights to be pretty boring. Plastic photographic slides were mounted on cardboard and put into a projector and shone on the screen. This is how these 19th century giant images were also seen. They were mounted and viewed through a 19th century projector. Let's see some examples. Oh, if you've been researching the 19th century mud flood and hidden history, you would have seen many images like this. Some you see with parts of the mounting visible. Sometimes the glass is cracked. So how long have the image slides been around? Well, the mid-19th century is stated as the official narrative, as the official creation of photography. These glass slides have been around a lot longer. Phantasmagoria was a form of horror theatre that used one or more backlighted glass slides to project frightening images, especially of ghosts. It was very popular in Europe from the late 18th century well into the 19th century. The dictionary meaning for video as a noun states 1. The recording, reproducing or broadcasting of moving visual images. I'm going to bypass the 18th century and go further back in time to the first broadcasting of moving visual images. 17th century Dutch scientist Christian Huygens is widely accepted by the mainstream narrative as the true inventor of this technology. This Dutch scientist is also given credit to discovering a great many things in history. I thought I'd just list a few here. Titan, explanation of Saturn's rings, centrifugal force, collision formula, Huygens-Fresnel principle, wave theory, Huygens engine, which is a gunpowder engine, birefringence, and Huygens also invented the pendulum clock in 1656. He was a very, very busy man. I think his story needs a closer look at. In his writings, Christians initially referred to this technology as la lampe and la lanterne, but in the last years of his life he used the then common term, Lanterna Magica, and this is the term these images are known by today, the magic lantern. The earliest slides for magic lanterns consisted of hand-painted images on glass, projected by showmen telling stories about the images that were projected. I will leave you today with a short clip of Mr. Bob Snell, who has amassed a collection of some 12,000 magic lantern slides. It's an interesting little story, and what he says about the colour technique I thought was quite curious. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.
Well, where to start? Slides under there, slides there, slides over there, slides in here. Oh, I found them all over the country as I traveled around and different antique collector shows and whatever. And this probably wouldn't impress anybody nowadays. However, you go back 100 and some odd years ago, and when you saw something like that on the screen, moving in color, everybody was, oh, ah. Usually you would start a show with one of these. And so it just, what they did back then was unbelievable. It's not always this messy, sometimes it's worse. I've got so many projects going, but I don't have time to get bored. I did all my coming attraction slides. And then I started doing my advertising slides. And then I got sidetracked on doing my slides from Joseph Boggs Beale, who was an artist back in Philadelphia. And he did the original artwork for, about at least 1,800 magic lantern slides. And I have the second largest collection of his slides in the country. And his artwork was on basically a 16 by 16 paper and watercolor. Then they were photographed down to the image to go, and then contact prints were made. And when they made these things, they didn't have all these special paints to stick onto glass, and how some of this stuff is stuck like that kaleidoscope for over 100 years. And a lot of these things were stored in garages, basements, barns, whatever, in all kinds of conditions. And it's just amazing how they have managed to survive.